We're looking at a case today that technically really shouldn't exist. It's a mystery that pits the cold, hard laws of geology and physics against the, well, a desperate, unwavering hope of a grieving family.
Mm.
We're going to the Florida Panhandle, to a site called Vortex Spring. It's deceptively beautiful, crystal clear water, a constant 68 degrees year-round.
Mm-hmm.
But deep down past the main cavern, there's a cave system that is just notoriously dangerous.
Dangerous is putting it mildly. There's a sign at the entrance to the actual cave section, maybe 115 feet down, and it's a picture of the Grim Reaper.
Wow.
Yeah, and the text is blunt. It says, "Prevent your death. Go no farther."
It's the last possible warning for anyone who isn't a certified cave diver.
And that is the setting for the disappearance of Ben McDaniel. On August 18th, 2010, Ben, a 30-year-old diver, went right past that sign. He was seen going into the cave, and he never came out.
But here's the hook.
This is the hook, and it's the whole reason we're doing this deep dive. The best cave recovery divers in the world, people who literally map the unknown for a living, they say Ben McDaniel is not in that cave. Exactly. The central conflict here is just baffling. You have an eyewitness who saw him go in. You have a family completely convinced he's still down there somewhere.
Right.
But you have physical evidence, specifically the size of the man versus the size of the passages, that says it's physically impossible for him to be where everyone thinks he is.
So our mission today is to unpack this paradox. We need to sift through the psychological profile of Ben McDaniel, the really strange physical clues found at the site, and the controversial, even tragic aftermath of the search.
Yeah.
Because usually the question is, where's the body?
Mm-hmm.
Here, the question is there even a body at all?
To understand why Ben was even at Vortex Spring, you really have to look at his headspace. Because in August 2010, Ben wasn't just there for a casual dive. He was in the middle of a massive life reset.
Yeah, I spent some time looking at his background, and this term triple hit kept coming up in the sources. It wasn't just a bad week for him, it was a total collapse of the life he'd built. He's 30 years old, from a wealthy family in Tennessee, but the year before, his disappearance was just brutal.
Right. So first, you got a painful divorce. Second, a catastrophic business failure. He had a construction company that just went under, and it left him with a pretty significant tax debt. We're talking around $50,000 to the IRS.
That is a heavy burden for anyone. But the third hit was the one that really seemed to break him. It was the death of his younger brother, Paul, back in 2008. And the circumstances were just traumatic. Ben was actually the one who found Paul unconscious in their family home. He tried to revive him, CPR, the whole thing. But Paul died. He was only 22.
And that kind of trauma, it lingers. Initially, the family thought it was a stroke. Ben even threw himself into fundraising for stroke awareness to sort of cope. But later, toxicology reports confirmed it was a drug overdose.
So you have the shock of the death, and then it's compounded by the complexity of the cause.
Exactly.
So Ben's parents, trying to help him heal, they suggest a sabbatical. They offered to support him financially while he lived at their beach house on the Emerald Coast. It was supposed to be a time to recover, to clear his head.
And for a little while, it seemed to be working.
It did. He had his dog, a rescue lab he absolutely adored. He had a new girlfriend. He was talking about becoming a diving instructor. But, and there's always a but, Vortex Spring started to become more than just a hobby. It became an obsession.
This is where we need to be really clear about his skills. Ben was an open water diver. He was comfortable in the water, for sure.
Right.
But as you know, being a good open water diver does not make you a cave diver. They are two completely different universes.
Oh, completely. Open water is all about freedom. If you have a problem, you just go up. Cave diving is about constraint. There's a rock ceiling above you. You can't just surface.
It requires specialized training in buoyancy, gas management, psychological control. Ben did not have that certification.
And the sources say he was exploring the cave covertly, which that implies he knew he wasn't supposed to be there.
Oh, he knew. Vortex Spring has a locked gate about 300 feet into the cave to prevent exactly this kind of thing. The dive shop holds the key, and they're super strict. They only give it to certified cave divers.
Okay, so let's zoom in on the day he disappeared. August 18th, 2010. It's a hot Wednesday in Florida. Ben does a midday dive, fills his tanks, and he seems to be prepping for something big. He's testing equipment, making notes.
Then the sun starts to set. It's around 7:30 p.m. Ben gears up for another dive. And this is where we get this massive breach of protocol that basically enabled the whole tragedy.
The employee?
Yeah, an employee named Eduardo Terran. He knew Ben wasn't certified. He even suspected Ben had been forcing the gate open on previous dives.
And instead of stopping him, Taran basically hands him the keys to the kingdom.
He literally unlocked the gate for him. Terran swam down, unlocked it, watched Ben enter the cave, and then just went back to the surface. And that was the last confirmed sighting of Ben McDaniel.
That decision is just mind-boggling to me. But what happened next is also strange. Usually if you unlock a gate for a diver, you wait for them to come back, right? You watch for their bubbles.
Standard procedure. You watch for bubbles on the surface. It tells you the diver is decompressing, just hanging out at a shallow depth to let nitrogen off gas safely.
And employees had seen bubbles on previous nights.
Right. But that night,
Yeah.
they didn't wait. They went to Terran's house for coffee.
So nobody even realizes he's gone. His truck just sits in the lot for 2 full days. It's the height of summer, so maybe people just thought it was a busy week. I don't know. But finally, someone notices the truck hasn't moved.
And when they went to his house, they found the most heartbreaking clue. His dog. The dog was hungry, hadn't been fed for 2 days.
That detail really stuck with me. If you're planning to disappear, if you're staging this, you don't leave your best friend to starve.
No way.
It just strongly suggests Ben fully intended to be home that night.
I agree. It points away from a planned disappearance. So the authorities assume the worst. A drowning. They bring in cadaver dogs, which alert on the water's surface. They send in recovery divers. But almost immediately, the physical evidence starts telling this really confusing story.
Okay, let's get into the technical side here, because this is where the mystery really takes shape. They found Ben's tanks, but they weren't where they were supposed to be.
Correct. They found 2 tanks near the cave entrance and a third one much deeper, about 200 feet in. Now, in cave diving, you practice something called staging.
You leave breadcrumbs for yourself.
Exactly. You drop tanks along your route so you have a guaranteed air supply for your exit.
Right, but you stage them so you can actually reach them on the way out. Finding 2 tanks right at the entrance seems, well, useless.
It's inefficient at best. It's like leaving your spare tire in the garage instead of the trunk. But the bigger issue, the one that really worried the experts, was what was in the tanks.
I was reading about this. It was just normal air, right? And apparently that's a huge red flag for deep diving.
It's a massive red flag. Air is about 21% oxygen and 79% nitrogen. At depth, under pressure, those gases change how they affect your body. Below 100 feet or so, nitrogen acts like an intoxicant. It's called nitrogen narcosis, the martini effect.
You get confused, euphoric.
Or panicked. You make bad decisions. But there's also an oxygen issue. It's called oxygen toxicity. As you go deeper, the partial pressure of oxygen increases. If it gets too high, oxygen becomes toxic and can cause instant convulsions.
And if you convulse underwater, you drown.
You drown. Deep cave divers use specialized gas mixes, like Trimix, which adds helium to avoid all of this. Ben was just using standard air.
So this tells us he wasn't just uncertified, he was dangerously unprepared for the depth he was attempting. He's dealing with narcosis, the risk of seizures, and he's in a dark, confined tunnel.
And yet, despite weeks of searching, the volunteer divers find nothing, no body, no equipment beyond those misplaced tanks.
And this is where we have to introduce the man who changed the entire trajectory of this case, Ed Sorensen. Because he's not just some guy with a tank, he's a legend in this field.
Ed Sorensen is a recovery specialist with over 2,500 logged dives. When the local recovery team said, "It's too dangerous, we can't go any further," Sorensen flew in. He's also smaller than Ben was. Sorensen is about 6 feet, 190 pounds. Ben was a big guy, 6'1", 210 pounds, broad shoulders.
And that size difference becomes the crucial piece of evidence. Sorensen went way deeper than Ben had ever mapped, right?
He went 1,700 feet into the cave. He used a diver propulsion vehicle, a DPV, to scan the furthest reaches. And he encountered what are called restrictions.
I looked up some diagrams of these. We're talking about cracks in the rock that are maybe 10 inches high. That is terrifying. It's basically trying to squeeze through a mail slot while wearing life support.
That's a good way to put it. To get through, a diver has to take off their tanks, push them ahead, and literally contort their body. Sorensen, who is smaller than Ben and an expert at this, said he barely made it through himself.
And Ben, we have to remember, had no training in removing his tanks underwater.
But the smoking gun for Sorensen wasn't just the size of the opening. It was the condition of the cave itself. He described it as pristine.
Paint a picture for us. Why does pristine matter so much in a cave?
Okay, so caves are filled with silt, this fine sediment that's settled over thousands of years. It's like dust in an attic that hasn't been opened in a century. If a 210-pound, panicked, untrained diver tries to jam himself through a 10-inch limestone crack.
It's going to be a violent event.
Oh, it would be. He would scratch the walls, he would churn up the floor. It would look like a bomb went off in terms of visibility. But Sorensen found the sand ripple marks on the floor completely undisturbed. The silt was perfect.
So, impossible.
He said it is physically impossible for a human to have passed through there without leaving a single trace.
So Sorensen comes up and says, unequivocally, he is not in there.
Period. He staked his professional reputation on it.
And this brings us to the most tragic impasse of the whole story. You have the cold physics of the rock saying no, and you have a grieving family saying he must be.
Yeah.
The McDaniels had already lost one son. They just couldn't accept that the second one had vanished into thin air.
And they had the resources to keep pushing. They funded this massive search. They even guaranteed $54,000 to cover a police ROV, a remote-controlled submarine, just to get it into the cave.
Which, ironically, failed to go as far as the human divers because it got stuck. But then the family did something that really, really escalated the situation. They offered a reward.
And this is where the story turns from a mystery into a cautionary tale. They offered $10,000 and eventually raised it to $30,000. But it was the phrasing that caused so much friction. The challenge kind of implied that other divers just needed to be brave enough to find him.
Oh, I can see how that would land poorly. You have professionals like Sorensen risking their lives for free, and now they're being told they just aren't brave enough. It feels like you're baiting people into a death trap.
It was incredibly dangerous. The expert community warned them. They said this money is going to lure unqualified divers to their deaths, and tragically, they were right.
2 years later, 2012, Larry Higginbotham.
Larry Higginbotham entered the cave and didn't come out. When they found his body, the details were just chillin'. He was found near a tight restriction with a shovel.
A shovel.
The evidence suggests he was trying to dig his way through the silt restriction to get deeper, presumably to find Ben and claim that reward.
That is just us. It adds a whole other layer of tragedy to this. The mystery of Ben McDaniel actually killed another person.
It did. The family rescinded the reward immediately after Higginbotham's death. They realized the cost. But it just highlights how desperate they were for an answer, any answer.
So we're left with the alternatives. If Sorensen is right, and the rock doesn't lie, Ben isn't in the deep cave.
Yeah.
But we know he didn't come out the front door because his truck was there. So where is he?
This leads us to the two main theories outside of the cave. Foul play or a staged disappearance.
Let's look at foul play first. The family eventually hired a private investigator. There were some weird reports, something about a wild-eyed drunk man at the shop that evening.
There were loose threads. The most prevalent theory in this camp is the body removal theory. The idea is that maybe Ben died early on, maybe he drowned in the cavern or the shallow part of the cave, and someone found him.
And fearing liability, because they unlocked the gate for an uncertified diver.
They removed the body and disposed of it somewhere else on land.
It's a gruesome thought, but structurally it does solve the problem. It explains why the dogs smell death on the water, but the cave is empty. But moving a 210-pound man out of the water into a vehicle and disposing of him without leaving a shred of forensic evidence, that's a massive undertaking.
It is, and extensive searches of the surrounding woods and swamps turned up absolutely nothing. No remains, no shallow grave, nothing.
Then we have the other theory, the Gone Girl scenario.
Yeah.
That Ben staged his own death.
Some of the dive shop employees really bought into this one. And you can see the motive. He's $50,000 in debt. He's divorced. He's reeling from his brother's death. The theory is that he fakes his drowning to escape that triple hit and start a new life somewhere else.
But every time I think about this, I just come back to the parents.
The parents are the strongest counter evidence. They argue that Ben saw firsthand what the death of his brother Paul did to them. It destroyed them. They refuse to believe, and honestly, it's hard to disagree, that Ben would willingly inflict that same nuclear level of pain on them a second time just to escape a tax bill.
And the dog. We mentioned it earlier, but it's worth repeating. You just don't leave your rescue dog to starve if you're planning a meticulous escape.
So we are left with a true paradox, a locked room mystery where the room is an underwater geological formation.
It really forces you to decide what you trust more. The psychological profile of a man who wouldn't hurt his family, or the physical constraints of a limestone tunnel.
Sorensen trusts the rock. He says the rock doesn't lie, it doesn't heal itself from scratches. The family trusts the man. And those two truths just cannot exist at the same time.
It's been well over a decade now. The state of Florida issued a death certificate in 2013. But without a body, there's no real closure.
And that Grim Reaper sign is still there. It was meant to be a warning about depth, but now it feels like a marker for a permanent question mark.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've spent this whole time looking down at the depth, at the cave, at the silt, but maybe the answer was never down there. That sign at the entrance. Was it the gateway to a tomb no human can reach? Or was it just a red herring for a tragedy that happened above the surface while everyone was looking the other way?
It's a haunting possibility. Sometimes the Earth just swallows the truth, and no amount of searching can get it back.
A huge thank you to all the divers who risked their lives in this search. Our thoughts with the McDaniel family and with the Higginbotham family. It's a heavy story, but an important one. Thanks for diving in with us.
Stay safe out there.